everyone, my name is Val. Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be talking a little bit about Preptober and everything that comes with the months of preparation before NaNoWriMO. For those of you who don't know, Preptober is what writers lovingly refer to October as, because it's the months that you spend kind of preparing for writing your novel come November. So the things you'll usually tend to do beforehand is, outlining your novel, coming up with your characters, any sort of world building, and essentially just setting yourselves achievable goals for NaNoWriMO next month. Today I thought I was going to walk you guys through like 5 main things to keep in mind when you're doing your Preptober. And yeah, let's get right into it. So first off, we'd have character crafting. Character crafting is one of my favorite things to do. Your story should revolve around your characters, because at the end of the day, you might not remember all the details of the plot in this, but you remember the characters, how they made you feel, how they felt, and I think it's like the most important thing to start out with when writing a novel. So first off, I would advise you to create a character questionnaire or character sheet that helps you deep dive into your character's personality, into their motivations, their conflicts, and their backstory. Something like that. I worked really hard on this, guys, and there's a free template you can get below. You're welcome. Secondly is to develop a character mood board. You can use images, quotes, and different visuals to represent your main characters. This is something I tend to do before I start even writing or putting pen to paper for most of my characters. I tend to use Pinterest for it, and I think most other writers probably do as well. Here's just one of the mood boards that I made for the main character of Project Soames, the one I'm currently working on. It's a cozy fantasy / cottagecore story, and I really love her. And here's also one, for example, for the antagonist, just so we can kind of understand what we're dealing with in terms of characters. And it's really good for us writers to remember what inspired this character later on, because I feel sometimes as I write along in a story, I tend to maybe get off course with their character and start maybe writing my own opinions or another character's opinions. And it's really good to kind of revert back to it and be like, no, this is this character's opinion and this is how this character is. So, and besides, mood boards are just so much fun to make, really. Go ahead and do that. Tip number 3 is writing a letter from one of your OCs to another. It can reveal secrets, maybe their hidden feelings, maybe some past act that they've been wanting to communicate for a while. I think it's really interesting, and it kind of helps me write the confessions between the romantic interests, because you really dive deeper into your character once again and kind of see what moves them, what's important to them, and it's really, I recommend that. And lastly, in terms of character crafting, I would tell you to explore your character's relationship through relationship diagrams. So I've made a little one here, and as you can see, the lines are probably all nonsensical to you, which makes sense. I mean, it's kind of done for myself, more or less, right now, and I didn't really want to make too many details because that would be a spoiler for the novel. But as you can see, our main character is Ximena in the top left corner. Well, not completely top left, but yeah. And you can just kind of see that she has a relationship with a lot. She has a relationship, of course, with the love interest, with friends, family, and with her antagonist. So these are the main relationships you'll want to portray and have kind of on paper before you get into NaNoWriMO. So moving on to plot. Plot is probably my least favorite out of the 3. So there's characters, plot, world building. World building is my fave, 100%, but we're not there quite yet. So moving to plot, it's probably really good for you to create a mind map or like a visual timeline of the key plot points and events. This is really important if you have several subplots going on in your story. So you want to have your overall theme or your overall main plot, and then have like kind of the subplots running perpendicular to it and see where they would interweave, see where it drops, and kind of just keeping in mind that you do need to wrap them up at the end of the book. If not in the first, then if it's like a trilogy or a duology, then later on. But don't leave your readers hanging. So this is just really important. Once again, visualizing it really helps. You can also experiment with different story structures for your novel. Probably you're familiar with the hero's journey and the 3-act structure, but you can also try something new, like non-linear narratives, essentially, or unreliable narrators. I think there's really cool books coming out that really leave you like, oh, so is the protagonist the protagonist? Are they actually the antagonist? I'm just reading it from their point of view. There's just so many fun things you can do, and it really helps immerse your readers into it. So after that, we have the write the one sentence elevator pitch. I hated doing that so much, but it's so useful when it comes to really understanding what the core of your story is. So for me, it would be something along the lines of deaf apothecary apprentice finds mysterious stranger in a hidden sanctuary. The only problem is, how did he get there? Or something along these lines. And it's really, once again, it helps you as a writer visualize where you're going with it. And lastly, for plot, before we can finally move on to world building, it's develop a list of potential subplots or stories you want to add to enhance your main narrative. Subplots are never supposed to take away from the main narrative. So if your readers are struggling understanding what the main plot is, then it's not good. And I would... Ooh, I'm not in focus anymore. I am back in focus. And it would probably not be a good thing to do, in my opinion. But there's so many good subplots you can build in that actually enhance your plot. So one of the most popular, of course, is a romantic subplot. Another one is found family. There's like so many, but there's like a list here of just different sort of subplot ideas you can use that are maybe not as traditional as most, but I feel really enhance the story and make your characters come to life. Finally, into world building. One of the best things I love doing for everything, even though it probably doesn't really matter to it, is designing a map for my story setting. Not that I mean it doesn't matter to it, but it is definitely not the most important thing I should start off planning, but it's like the most fun, so I have to kind of be like, yeah, we're going to do something fun before we're going to go into the hard part. Kind of, my brain works like that sometimes. And I think it's just really cool, and you can use that even if you're building like a whole fictional continent, you know, let's like high fantasy with all the different kingdoms and the sea of despair and the this and the that, like in the really fancy drawings, and you have like, you know the maps I'm talking about, yeah? But you can also do that for like a smaller town, like a small town romance, all the like main points, you know, like, oh, this is where the carnival is, or this is where the pier is, where they walk along on their first date, and this is where the bookshop where the main character works, and it kind of helps visualize where everything is, both for your readers and for you at this point, and it's just really fun to dive into, in my opinion. Another part of the world building is also create a cultural guide for your fictional world. So these things could include like the customs, the languages, and the traditions that certain cultures in your book have. This applies definitely more to fantasy writing than most others, but it is one of my favorite things to do. I'm a Christian fiction writer, and I love taking inspiration from other cultures and kind of work it into it. So what I mean is, most fantasy cultures are based off some of our real life cultures with tweaks, sometimes more, sometimes less. Some people combine them, some people like nitpick like this part of this culture, this part of this culture. And I think it's really one of the most fun things to do when you're writing fantasy is coming up with these cultures. So when I mean like detailed customs, so like what is the whole thing with pregnancy? How do people treat pregnant women? How is birth being treated? How do you celebrate birthdays? Are there birthdays? Are they a thing? What about weddings? What about funerals? You know, what about graduation? What is considered something valuable? So is it like, I don't know, your education? Is it how many children you have? Is it how you contribute to the country? Like, what are the different things that this society values, and how that has an impact on your characters? Again, so maybe your character really agrees with a lot of these customs, maybe they are actively fighting against it. So these are some important things to keep in mind when world building. Another thing that I've been starting to do with the current whip that I'm working on, and I don't just talk about my whip because I want to like sell it to you guys, but it just really helps me apply what I'm sharing with you guys to my own work, if that makes sense. So it's essentially building a glossary for unique terms and slang that is used in your story's world. So some expressions, instead of cuss words, for example, you can come up with something. So I don't tend to cuss a lot, but I tend to say bucks and shuckles, and it doesn't have any meaning, but it's just something I'm probably going to work into the story. And another thing is, when you're dealing with foreign cultures and you want to take certain phrases and certain words into it. So right now I'm writing a Basque fantasy, like that is the same project, the cottagecore one, but it's inspired by like Basque mythology. And some of the words or the names I'm taking like straight away, and I'm just gonna like have a little glossary at the beginning so people understand what is what, because just kind of having the characters explain it within the book can be really like information dump sometimes, and I don't like it as much. So I think that's probably the way I'm gonna go about it. So, and then the fourth point is to explore the history of your world with the main important events. Once again, this probably applies more to fantasy because that's what we do on this channel, but it's really important. So probably George R. R. Martin is like the best fictional historian when it comes to his works that I know of, because he has like the history for each and every single nation and continent, how they intersect, how they differ, how these things also affect each other. Because just like in the real world, after certain huge events, such as the 2020 time we all spent at home a lot more, or the wars, the world wars, there's just certain key points when things tend to change culturally, economically, socially, and that's probably going to be also a make or break point for your protagonist or your characters, where they would have been influenced directly or indirectly by those main events. So it's just kind of important to keep them also linear if you plan to do like a large fantasy story. So moving on to writing preparation, this is going to be more about personal things that you will want to do before you start NaNoWriMO. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was experimenting with different writing tools or writing software that I wanted to use. Because I think most people probably use like either Microsoft Word or Google Docs or something like this. There's also a lot of good paid things like Scrivener and Noveler and I think Ulysses, I think that's what it's called. But there's just so many different tools, and find one that works for you. A lot of writing tools or writing softwares nowadays already offer like plotting and scene cards and character sheets right straight in their software. So it can be really helpful, especially for Preptober. There's also another thing that is more about you. So it's really important that you set up a dedicated writing space and time. And I think that it's going to be really hard for a lot of people, because most of us are probably students, or we have jobs, or we have a household to run, or we have like different things. Like I don't know a lot of people that are actually full-time writers. But I think about the dedication that is required for this is going to help you in the long run. And I mean, it doesn't mean you have to like block a whole week or a whole month or anything, because that's really unrealistic. But decide like, okay, you're most productive in the morning or you're most productive in the evening. Like find out what type of writer you are. Once again, I'm out of focus. Hello. Hey guys, so I'm a little closer now because for some reason my focus wasn't working. Anyway, back to the dedicated writing space and time. It's really important, and this is something I started doing myself because I'm a horrible procrastinator, and I tend to be like, oh, I'll do it then, like when it's aesthetic or when it's this or when it's that. But it doesn't work that way, for me at least. Like I need to actually get myself to sit down and write. And I didn't set myself a word count, I didn't set myself even a time limit, but I set myself, you will sit down and write. And currently I've been hitting about 1,000 words a day, which is really good for me. And I'm really excited to see like my manuscript kind of just grow. So I think it's, once again, really important, just dedicate time and effort into it, even if it's hard. Also, another thing that plans into it, that flows into it, would be make a writing routine, either daily or weekly. And if you do want to set word count goals, that's really good. This kind of feeds into the point before it, but the first one I feel is more about like self-discipline, and this one is more about find what works for you best, like experiment, and don't be afraid. Like there's so many awesome AuthorTube people that you can just see what their writing routines are, and you can get inspired by them and just see what works for you. Again, every writer is as unique. Every novel is unique and every writer is unique, and what might have worked for one novel might not work for the other. Keep that in mind as well. So don't be so hard on yourself and just like, you got this. And lastly, create a writing playlist if you like music or candles. So I have cats, so I can't have any more scented candles now because they start like getting sick from them. But it was one of the things I used to do before. Like I would have my scented candles, and like depending on what I'm writing romance, we'd have like, you know, some romantic music in the background. I'm writing epic fantasy scenes, we'll have like some Hans Zimmerman playing in the background. And I think it's really important. Right now I'm kind of in my silence era, so I can't deal with any background noise, but you guys do you. And lastly, it's the inspiration and research phase. So once again, back to Pinterest, which I think we authors love. Make a Pinterest board for your entire novel. So I showed you guys like my characters, mood boards essentially. Now make one for your entire novel, and this will really help you narrow down the themes that you will want to explore. And it will help you focus better on it, and your novel will come out better for it because you're not distracted. Like we authors, I feel like we tend to get distracted with how much we want to do in one book. So this kind of helps me not do that. And it's fun. It's fun. Pretty pictures, always good. Secondly, read books or watch films in the genre that you're planning to write. So one of the things I did was buy this. It's German. I'm German, that's why it's German. It's a book on Heilpflanzen, healing plants. Yes, because my main character is an apothecary, and if I'm going to write about apothecary stuff, I should know some things. Do I necessarily believe in this? No, but it's important for me to know what my character knows, at least to a certain extent, so I can write it in a realistic fashion that my readers will enjoy. And then thirdly, this is really wildly dependent because most of us will probably fall into a second category. If you can, visit your real life locations of where your book is inspired by. So of course, if your fantasy kingdom is inspired by Indonesia, be super cool to go travel there, right, and see it. But for most of us rather financially limited people, let's stick to the internet because we have the opportunity to see so many amazing things. Again, one through Pinterest or just even a Google search, you can see so many of the most, I guess, beautiful places of the countries or the places where your book is inspired by. And it just really, really helps. So definitely do that before you get into writing. And lastly, seek documentaries, articles, and interviews that are more non-fiction rather than fiction, because I do think even the best piece of fiction needs to have some sort of non-fiction in it that helps you kind of drive the point home. This is once again why I bought this book, because I really wanted to know what I'm writing about. Could I make up fake plants and be like, oh yeah, plant A does this, plant B is used for this and this? Yes, but I thought it would be a lot cooler to actually use like the world that we have been given and what's already in it. So guys, turns out I can't count. We had one more place. So lastly, we have planning and organization. So first, it would be to set up a dedicated NaNoWriMO folder. And this is because I like to write messily. I don't tend to write linear. Sometimes I'll write the ending, sometimes I'll write this and this, but having everything in one place, I have to be like, wait, didn't I write that already? And then boom, yeah, probably did. It's right there. Secondly, for those plotters amongst thee, create an outline. Please create an outline, whether chapter by chapter or a loose roadmap, but it helps you orient yourself, once again, not to get lost in the jungle of ideas that tends to reside in our author brains. Thirdly, prepare a backup plan. This one was really, really important because some days you don't feel like writing, or you might face writer's block, or you're just really tired. But every single day that you don't write is a day you're not writing. And yeah, of course that makes sense. But I feel like once again, it goes back to being kind of disciplined with it. 10 words counts as writing. It really does. And if you don't want to write on this, write on something else. This is what I've been doing. I've been getting really bored from writing the protagonist POV. So I started writing the antagonist's POV. And it's been so much fun because I really don't like my antagonist. So writing her is kind of very interesting for me as well. And it kind of gives me like something to do when I don't feel like working on the main plot line. I can just kind of write that. Another tip, again, mood boards or just writing, again, like remember that letter I told you guys about, writing from one character to another? These things, as long as you're working on your book, I do feel like it counts as writing, because we all have days where it's too much. So, you know, push through them as best as you can, but mental health, of course, comes first. And lastly, for real this time, find a writing buddy or an accountability partner, because some people, like myself, tend to start writing and then I have like 25 words within like 10 days, easy peasy, and then suddenly I hit a roadblock and I'm like, well, novel is not seeing the light of day for another 5 to 6 months until I pick it up again. But when I have someone who regularly checks in on me and more or less kind of goes, so what is this? Or like, they kind of keep you on your toes in a good competition sort of way, and they also kind of depend on you for their feedback. And that's, I don't know, that at least for me that works better when I'm like, oh, someone depends on my work or on me helping them. Okay, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna be there. But I wouldn't necessarily do that for myself, if that makes sense. So I think having a writing buddy, and plus it's really fun. I would recommend getting one in the same genre as you, just because you can like geek out over the same things. But a benefit to having someone not in your genre is you tend to get inspired by what they write. And this is something I'll hit on in another video as well. Using other genres, tropes, or themes within yours can add like this little bit of extra flavor that gives your book like the little kick that readers will like. I don't know why I've been so animated this video, just enjoying it. That was actually it for the video, guys. Happy Preptober, everyone. And I really hope you guys are gonna do great in NaNoWriMo, and just hang in there, guys. Keep writing, keep working, keep putting words to paper. You're doing good. Just if you guys need to hear this, you're doing great. And once again, here's this amazing template for a character sheet/questionnaire. Yes, it's not the same, I know, but you guys are gonna love it. You can find it in the link down below, and I wish you guys a lovely evening or day, whatever. Bye!